6 months after the Kepler 442b incident, the Galaxy operated under completely new rules that nobody had voted for but everyone was forced to accept. The Vex Empire had dissolved entirely after Admiral Zeth surrendered his flagship and begged for mercy. From the human fleet, the surviving Vex were scattered across space as refugees rather than conquerors, learning what it felt like to be homeless and afraid. Captain Park Hyun commanded the new Sol on routine patrol through sectors that had been terrorized by raiders for decades, but were now experiencing unprecedented peace. The space lanes that had once been too dangerous for civilian traffic were bustling with merchant ships from dozens of different species who could finally trade without fear of pirates or slavers. The transformation had been remarkable, and swift pirates who had operated in these regions for generations had either reformed their ways or simply disappeared after hearing stories about what happened to people who preyed on innocent civilians. The few who had tried to continue their criminal activities had been hunted down by human patrol ships and given the choice between prison or exile. Trade routes that had been abandoned for years were reopening as cargo haulers and passenger ships returned to space lanes that were now protected by the invisible presence of human dreadnoughts. Nobody could see the Terran Defense Fleet ships because of their advanced camouflage technology, but everyone knew they were watching and waiting. The Terran Defense Alliance had grown from a single desperate rescue mission into a coalition of over 200 worlds that request. Admiral Taehyung was drinking his morning coffee when the emergency alarm started screaming through Seoul Space Command. The sound meant that something terrible had happened somewhere in space. He ran to the command center where dozens of technicians were staring at their screens in shock. Commander Yoo-jin met him at the door. Her face was pale and her hands were shaking. She had been working the night shift when the deep space monitoring stations picked up the signal. It had taken 8 months to travel from the edge of human space to Earth. She handed him a datapad with the decoded message. The transmission was from the colony ship New Sol that had left Earth almost a year ago. Everyone had assumed they were building their new settlement by now. Instead, they had been captured by alien slavers on their 3rd day of travel. Taehyung read the message 3 times before his brain could accept what it was saying. 30,000 humans had been killed or enslaved by something called the Vorthan Empire. The few survivors had been taken to alien worlds to be sold like animals. Yoo-jin showed him the video recordings that Jin-ae had transmitted before the ship was destroyed. They watched Vorthan soldiers dragging human children from their hiding places. They saw families being separated forever. They saw the cold, efficient way the aliens sorted people like cargo. The recording quality was poor because of the huge distance the signal had traveled. But they could still see everything clearly enough. They could see Somin and the other teenagers being loaded into alien transport ships. They could see parents being shot for trying to protect their children. Taehyung had served in the space fleet for 30 years. He had seen accidents and equipment failures and natural disasters. He had never seen anything like this. He had never seen humans being treated like farm animals by creatures from another world. Within 2 hours, every major government on Earth knew about the transmission. The president of Korea called an emergency meeting with world leaders. The video from the New Sol was broadcast on every news channel. 30 billion humans learned that they were not alone in the universe and that the universe was full of monsters. The public reaction was immediate and explosive. Protests filled the streets of every major city. People demanded action against the aliens who had murdered their people. Military recruitment centers were overwhelmed with volunteers. Everyone wanted to do something to help the survivors. Dr. Kenji Nakamura was a physicist who had spent his whole career studying distant stars and peaceful exploration. When he saw the footage from the New Sol, he locked himself in his laboratory and started designing weapons. His research team worked around the clock developing new technologies for war. Engineer Bo-ram had been building cargo ships and passenger liners before the alien signal arrived. Now she was designing military vessels with thick armor and powerful guns. Her factory converted from making peaceful exploration equipment to producing instruments of revenge. The Global Defense Council met in emergency session for 72 hours straight. They authorized the largest military spending program in human history. Every nation contributed resources and personnel. Old enemies worked together against the new threat that had taken their people. Commander Yoo-jin was put in charge of recruiting and training the new Space Marine Corps. She traveled to every continent looking for the best soldiers and pilots and engineers. The volunteers came from every background and every culture, but they all shared the same burning desire to rescue their people. The first challenge was building ships fast enough to cross interstellar space. Human technology could barely reach the edge of their own solar system. They needed to develop faster-than-light travel from scratch while also building an entire warfleet. Thousands of the brightest scientists worked on the problem. They studied every piece of information from the alien signal. They analyzed the Vorthan ship designs and tried to understand how their technology worked. They made breakthrough after breakthrough driven by desperation and rage. Dr. Su Jin had been a pediatric surgeon before the new soul transmission changed everything. When she saw what the aliens had done to human children, she joined the Biological Warfare Research Division. She worked on developing weapons that would be harmless to humans, but deadly to alien physiology. The space shipyards of Earth ran at full capacity building the Liberation Fleet. Workers labored in shifts around the clock. Robotic assembly lines never stopped moving. Raw materials flowed in from asteroid mines and lunar factories. Every day brought them closer to the moment when they could strike back. News reports tracked the progress of the military buildup. People wanted to know when the rescue mission would launch. They wanted to know if any of the new soul survivors were still alive after 8 months of slavery. They wanted to know if Earth was strong enough to fight an interstellar empire. Intelligence analysts studied every detail of the alien transmission, looking for clues about Vorthan military capabilities. They estimated fleet sizes and weapon strengths. They mapped star systems where human slaves might be held. They developed target lists for the coming war. Training facilities were built in secret locations around the world. The new Space Marines learned to fight in zero-gravity and alien environments. They studied Vorthan psychology and tactics. They practiced boarding actions and rescue operations until they could do them perfectly even under extreme stress. Public support for the military program never wavered, even when the costs became enormous. Families donated their life savings to the war effort. Students dropped out of school to work in weapons factories. Retired soldiers came out of retirement to train the new recruits. The Thai Korean government established a special memorial for the victims of the new soul. Pictures of all 30,000 colonists covered an entire wall. Visitors left flowers and messages of remembrance. Children drew pictures of spaceships coming to rescue the prisoners. As the months passed, Earth transformed from a peaceful world into a war machine focused on a single goal. Every resource was directed toward building the fleet that would cross the galaxy to bring their people home. The aliens had made the mistake of thinking humans were weak and isolated. They were about to learn that humans were neither weak nor alone. They were about to discover that attacking Earth's children was the worst mistake anyone could make. The Vorthan Empire had awakened something they did not understand and could not stop. The Liberation Fleet grew larger every day. New weapons were tested and perfected. Soldiers trained for the battles to come. Earth prepared to show the galaxy what happened when someone hurt humanity's family. The signal from Jin-A had traveled across the void to reach them. Soon Earth's answer would travel back across that same void with a message of its own. The message would be written in fire and steel and delivered by the most dangerous military force the galaxy had ever seen. Engineer Boram stared at the blueprint on her computer screen. 3 months ago, she had been designing peaceful cargo ships to carry supplies between Earth's colonies. Now she was building instruments of war unlike anything humanity had ever created. The image of human children in alien chains burned in her mind every time she closed her eyes. Her team worked in the deep underground facilities beneath Seoul Space Industries. The complex stretched for kilometers through solid rock and contained the most advanced research laboratories on Earth. Scientists from every nation worked side by side developing technologies that would make the Vorthan Empire regret their cruelty. The biggest challenge was faster than light travel. Humans had been stuck in their own solar system for centuries because they could not break the light speed barrier. The aliens clearly had this technology, but Earth scientists had to figure it out from scratch using only the sensor readings from Jin-A's final transmission. Dr. Kenji Nakamura led the propulsion research team. He had studied theoretical physics his entire career, but never imagined he would use his knowledge to build engines of revenge. His breakthrough came when he realized that the Vorthan ship seemed to bend space around themselves rather than actually moving, faster than light, working 18 hours a day. For 6 months, his team developed the Fury drive. The name was perfect because Fury was Exactly what drove every person working on the project. The drive could fold space-time and let human ships cross vast distances in weeks instead of centuries. Bo-Ram took the Fury drive design and built it into the new Hammer-class destroyers. These ships were nothing like the peaceful exploration vessels Earth had built before. They were weapons designed for one purpose: to punch through alien defenses and rescue human prisoners. The Hammer destroyers had armor thick enough to ram through enemy battleships. Their weapons could punch holes through space station hulls. Most importantly, they carried the liberation protocol that Dr. Sarah Kim had developed in the Computer Warfare Division. Dr. Kim had been a peaceful software engineer before. The new Soul transmission changed her life forever. Now she created computer viruses specifically designed to disable Vorthon technology. The Liberation Protocol could shut down alien weapon systems and unlock their prison doors. Marine Sergeant Dong-hyun trained the first generation of space soldiers in facilities built deep under the Korean mountains. The volunteers came from every military force on Earth. Former enemies now worked together, united by their shared hatred of the aliens who had taken their people. The training was brutal and dangerous. Space combat was completely different from fighting on Earth. There was no gravity and no air and no sound. A single mistake could kill not just one soldier, but everyone around him. Dong-hyun pushed his recruits to their absolute limits and beyond. He taught them to fight in zero gravity using magnetic boots and thrust packs. He showed them how to cut through alien armor with plasma torches and explosives. Most importantly, he taught them never to show mercy to slavers no matter what the aliens said or promised. The volunteers learned to use every weapon humans could build. They trained with the new pulse rifles that could punch through Vorthon personal shields. They practiced with the molecular saws that could cut through the strongest alien metals. They memorized the locations of vital organs in Vorthon anatomy. Dr. Soo-jin worked in the biological warfare laboratories, developing weapons that would be harmless to humans, but devastating to alien physiology. Before the transmission from the new Soul, she had been a pediatric surgeon who dedicated her life to helping children. Now she created diseases to kill the monsters who enslaved children. Her research team analyzed every scrap of biological data from the alien signal. They identified weaknesses in Vorthon immune systems and nervous structures. They developed targeted pathogens that would cause intense pain and paralysis in aliens while leaving humans completely unaffected. The biological weapons were designed to be poetic justice. The aliens had performed medical experiments on human prisoners according to the intelligence reports. Now they would experience the same kind of suffering they had inflicted on innocent people. Commander Yu-jin oversaw the integration of all these new technologies into a single devastating military force. She coordinated between the research teams and the training facilities and the construction yards. Every piece had to work perfectly together when the Liberation Fleet finally launched. The orbital shipyards around Earth ran at maximum capacity 24 hours a day. Robotic construction arms assembled hull sections, while human workers installed the weapons and systems. Raw materials flowed up from Earth and in from the asteroid belt in an endless stream. Each Hammer destroyer took 3 months to build and cost more than most countries spent in an entire year. Earth was building 150 of them along with support vessels and troop transports. The economic cost was enormous, but no one complained about the price of bringing their people home. Intelligence. Analysts worked around the clock mapping Vorthon territory and identifying targets for the coming offensive. They studied communication intercepts and analyzed alien ship movements. They built detailed plans for striking slave processing centers and military installations. The analysts discovered that the Vorthon Empire controlled dozens of star systems and had been enslaving other species for thousands of years. Humans were just their latest victims. The scale of alien cruelty was almost impossible to comprehend. Captain Minho commanded the stealth reconnaissance squadron that would scout ahead of the main fleet. His ships were built for speed and invisibility using technology reverse-engineered from the alien sensor readings. They would gather intelligence on enemy positions and locate human prisoners. His pilots trained for months learning to operate in complete silence behind enemy lines. They practiced infiltration techniques and covert surveillance methods. Their job was to find the survivors from the new Soul and identify the best targets for the liberation offensive. The Space Marines trained for boarding actions using mock-ups of Vorthon ship designs. They learned to move through alien corridors and operate alien equipment. They memorized the faces of known Vorthon commanders, so they could identify high-value targets. Every piece of equipment was tested and retested under the most extreme conditions possible. The Liberation Fleet would only get one chance to rescue the human prisoners. Everything had to work perfectly the first time because there would be no opportunity for mistakes. As the construction deadline approached, Earth's entire industrial capacity was focused on a single goal. Factories that had made consumer goods now produced military equipment. Universities that had taught peaceful sciences now researched instruments of war. The transformation was complete when Admiral Tae-hyung stood on the observation deck watching the completed Liberation Fleet assemble in Earth orbit. 150 hammer destroyers hung in perfect formation like metal angels of vengeance. Each ship carried enough firepower to level a small moon. The fleet was ready to launch. The weapons were loaded and tested. The soldiers were trained and eager for battle. Earth had transformed itself from a peaceful civilization into the most dangerous military force the galaxy had ever seen. All of this had been accomplished in just 3 years, driven by pure human determination and rage. The aliens had made the mistake of thinking that mercy was weakness. They were about to learn that humans were strongest when they were protecting their family. The human Liberation Fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Vorthon space, like avenging demons emerging from hell itself. Admiral Tae-hyung stood on the bridge of his flagship Retribution, watching the alien star system appear on his tactical displays. After 3 years of preparation, Earth's children were finally coming home. The fleet had traveled for 6 weeks through folded space to reach this moment. 150 hammer destroyers hung in perfect formation, each one bristling with weapons designed specifically to kill Vorthons. The crews were ready for battle and hungry for revenge. Captain Min-ho commanded the Advanced Reconnaissance Squadron from his stealth ship, Shadow Walker. His orders were simple: find the human prisoners and identify the strongest enemy positions. His ships were invisible to alien sensors and moved like ghosts through the outer system. The first Vorthon patrol they encountered was a routine border guard of 6 light cruisers. The alien commanders had never seen human military vessels before. They transmitted the usual demands for identification and surrender, expecting the same helpless compliance they had received from the New Sol 3 years ago. Instead, they received a response broadcast on all Vorthon frequencies in perfect alien language. The message was short and terrifying. This is humanity. You have something that belongs to us. We have come to take it back. Resistance will be met with total destruction. The Vorthon patrol commander laughed at first, thinking this was some kind of joke. His ships had shields and armor and weapons tested in 1,000 battles across the galaxy. These unknown vessels looked primitive and weak compared to the mighty Vorthon war machine. His laughter died when the human weapons opened fire. The hammer destroyers had been built specifically to counter Vorthon technology, using every scrap of data from Jin'e's final transmission. Their plasma cannons punched through alien shields like they were made of paper. The battle lasted exactly 3 minutes and 17 seconds. 6 Vorthon cruisers were reduced to burning wreckage drifting in space. The few survivors were taken prisoner for interrogation about the locations of human slave camps. The Liberation Fleet had drawn first blood and tasted victory. Captain Min-ho's scouts used the chaos of battle to slip deeper into the star system undetected. Their sensors found what they were looking for on the 3rd planet, a massive slave processing facility where recently captured aliens were sorted and prepared for transport to markets across the Empire. The facility was heavily guarded by Vorthon military units and surrounded by defensive satellites, but the aliens had designed their defenses to keep prisoners and not to keep rescue forces out. They never imagined that someone would come looking for slaves with enough firepower to level planets. Min-ho transmitted the Liberation Protocol that Dr. Kim had developed to hack alien computer systems. The virus spread through the facility's networks like wildfire, shutting down security systems and unlocking prison doors. The Vorthons found themselves trapped in their own fortress. Marine Colonel Yun-Su led the assault teams that dropped from orbit in armored landing pods. Her soldiers had trained for 3 years for this exact moment. They moved through the facility corridors like unstoppable forces of nature, cutting down any alien who stood in their way. The Marines found hundreds of human prisoners in conditions that made them sick with rage. Men and women and children from dozens of different worlds were crammed into cells barely large enough for animals. Many showed signs of medical experimentation and torture. Among the prisoners, they found survivors from the New Soul, including So Min, who was now 18 years old. She had spent 3 years planning her escape and organizing resistance among the other human slaves. When the Marines kicked down her cell door, she was ready to fight alongside them. So Min had kept detailed records of Vorthan operations hidden in her clothing. She knew the locations of other slave facilities and the names of the worst alien commanders. Her information would be invaluable for planning future rescue operations. The liberation of the processing facility sent shock waves through Vorthan space. For the first time in their history, someone had successfully attacked their military installations and freed their slaves. The impossible had happened, and the implications terrified the alien leadership. Intelligence reports flooded in from across the Empire describing the human rescue fleet. The ships were faster and more heavily armed than anything the Vorthans had expected. Worse yet, the humans seemed to know exactly where to strike for maximum damage. Admiral Taehyung received updates from his task force commanders as they spread across multiple star systems hunting for more prisoners. Each rescue operation followed the same pattern: swift, overwhelming force followed by careful extraction of human survivors. The Vorthans tried to mount counterattacks, but their forces were scattered and unprepared for human tactics. Every battle ended the same way, with alien ships burning in space and their crews either dead or captured for interrogation. Dr. Sujin's biological weapons began appearing in Vorthan food supplies on military bases. The pathogens were designed to cause the same kind of suffering the aliens had inflicted on human prisoners. Vorthan soldiers found themselves paralyzed and helpless, just like their former victims. The psychological impact was devastating. The Vorthans had built their entire society on the belief that they were superior to all other species. Now they were being systematically hunted and defeated by creatures they had dismissed as weak prey. Commander Yu Jin coordinated the fleet's operations from the mobile command ship New Soul's Vengeance. The name was chosen specifically to honor the colonists who had died 3 years ago. Every human in the fleet carried their memory and fought in their name. News of the rescue operations spread through alien communication networks across the galaxy. Species that had been enslaved by the Vorthans for centuries began to hope that their liberation might be possible. The humans were proving that the mighty empire could be defeated. The Vorthan High Council called emergency sessions, trying to understand how their perfect system was falling apart. They had ruled through fear and superior technology for thousands of years. Now that technology was being turned against them by an enemy they had created through their own cruelty. Captain Minho's scouts discovered a massive slave market on Vorthan Prime where humans were being sold to buyers from across the galaxy. The facility contained thousands of prisoners, including many children who had been taken for special training programs. The intelligence was transmitted back to Admiral Taehyung, who immediately began planning the largest rescue operation of the war. Attacking Vorthan Prime would be incredibly dangerous, but the human prisoners there needed to be freed no matter what the cost, as the Liberation Fleet prepared for the assault on the alien homeworld. They knew this battle would determine the outcome of the entire war. If they succeeded, the Vorthan Empire would collapse. If they failed, the surviving humans would face punishment beyond imagination. So Min stood on the observation deck of the Retribution, watching the stars and thinking about her parents who had died on the New Soul. She had survived 3 years of slavery by promising herself that Earth would come for them. Now she was going home as part of the fleet that would end the Vorthan Empire forever. The hunt had begun, and humanity would not stop until every last prisoner was free and every slaver was dead or defeated. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when someone hurt Earth's children. The Vorthan High Council gathered in their Crystal Palace on Vorthan Prime as reports of military disasters flooded in from across their empire. Council leader Vex Kith read each transmission with growing horror. Human fleets were systematically destroying their forces and liberating slave camps throughout Vorthan space. Intelligence Chief Mordan presented his analysis to the panicking council members. The humans had appeared from nowhere with technology that seemed impossible. Their ships were faster than Vorthan vessels, and their weapons cut through Imperial shields like they did not exist. Even worse, the humans seemed to know exactly where to strike for maximum damage. They bypassed heavily defended military targets and went straight for the slave processing facilities. They rescued their people and disappeared before Vorthan reinforcements could arrive. The psychological warfare was devastating. Dr. Sujin's biological agents had infected food supplies on dozens of military bases. Vorthan soldiers were collapsing with mysterious illnesses that caused paralysis and intense pain. Fear was spreading through the Imperial military faster than any disease. Admiral Taehyung received intelligence reports from his reconnaissance teams about a massive slave auction scheduled to take place on Vorthan Prime. Buyers from across the galaxy would gather to purchase human children for their special properties. The event would happen in just 5 days. The slave auction was being held in the grand arena where the Vorthans displayed their most valuable captives. Thousands of humans would be sold to the highest bidders, including many children who had been taken from their families years ago. The facility was the most heavily defended location in the Empire. Taehyung knew this was their chance to strike at the heart of the Vorthan Empire. If they could rescue the prisoners and capture the alien leadership, the war would be over. But the risks were enormous. Vorthan Prime was protected by orbital defense platforms and entire fleets of warships. Captain Minho's stealth squadron had been gathering intelligence on the planet's defenses for weeks. The aliens had never imagined that someone would be bold enough to attack their homeworld. Their security focused on keeping prisoners in rather than keeping attackers out. The plan was simple but incredibly dangerous. The Liberation Fleet would strike simultaneously at multiple targets across the planet. While the main force attacked the orbital defenses, a smaller team would infiltrate the grand arena and free the human prisoners. Marine Colonel Yoon-soo volunteered to lead the ground assault team. She had seen what the Vorthans did to human children during previous rescue operations. The images haunted her dreams and fueled her determination to end the alien empire forever. Her assault marines had trained for this exact mission using detailed models of the grand arena. They knew every corridor and every security checkpoint. They had practiced the operation hundreds of times until they could execute it perfectly, even under extreme stress. Pilot Lieutenant Sang-wook commanded the bomber squadron that would take out Vorthan Prime's orbital defense network. His ships carried the most powerful weapons humanity had ever built. Each bomber could destroy a space station with a single missile strike. The attack began at exactly midnight Vorthan time, when most of the alien population was asleep. Human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel throughout the star system, launching coordinated strikes against military targets. Sang-wook's bombers screamed down from orbit, targeting the defense platforms that protected the planet. The aliens tried to raise their shields, but the Liberation Protocol had already infiltrated their computer networks. The platforms exploded one after another, lighting up the night sky. The main Vorthan fleet tried to respond, but found their ships dead in space. Dr. Kim's computer viruses had infected their navigation systems and weapon controls. The mighty Imperial Navy was helpless against an enemy they had dismissed as primitive barbarians. Colonel Yoon-soo's Marines dropped from orbit in stealth pods that landed directly inside the Grand Arena compound. The facility was huge and filled with security systems, but the Liberation Protocol had already unlocked every door and disabled every alarm. The Marines moved through the complex like avenging angels, cutting down any Vorthan guard who tried to stop them. 3 years of training and rage had turned them into the most effective fighting force in the galaxy. They showed no mercy to the slavers who had tortured their people. In the holding cells beneath the arena, they found over 5,000 human prisoners, including hundreds of children. Many were sick and injured from years of abuse. Some had been used for medical experiments that left permanent scars on their bodies and minds. So-min was there helping to organize the evacuation. She had been sold to a Vorthan research facility after her capture, but had never stopped planning her escape. When the Marines arrived, she was ready with detailed information about the facility layout. The rescue operation was proceeding perfectly when the Vorthans activated their final defense system. Hidden nuclear weapons throughout the complex were designed to destroy the entire facility if the slaves ever tried to escape. The aliens preferred to kill their prisoners rather than lose them. Commander Yu-jin detected the weapon signatures from orbit and transmitted a warning to the ground teams. They had less than 10 minutes to evacuate 5,000 prisoners from a facility that was about to become a radioactive crater. The Marines worked frantically to get everyone to the extraction points. Wounded prisoners were carried by their stronger companions. Children were lifted onto the shoulders of soldiers, who ran through corridors as structural supports. Began to fail around them. Transport ships dove through the planet's atmosphere, under heavy fire from remaining Vorthon forces. The pilots pushed their engines beyond safe limits, racing to reach the Grand Arena before the nuclear charges detonated. With 30 seconds to spare, the last transport lifted off, carrying Somin and the other survivors to safety. The Grand Arena exploded in a mushroom cloud visible from orbit as the Vorthons chose to destroy their most valuable facility rather than let the humans have it. But the rescue was complete. 5,000 human prisoners were free and on their way back to Earth. The Vorthon Empire's most important slave market had been destroyed, along with most of their planetary defense network. The psychological impact was catastrophic for the aliens. Their homeworld had been attacked successfully. Their military had been defeated by creatures they considered inferior. Their entire worldview was crumbling along with their empire. Admiral Taehyung broadcast a message to the surviving Vorthon leadership. Humanity offered them one chance to surrender and abolish slavery throughout their empire. If they refused, the human fleet would systematically destroy every Vorthon military installation in the galaxy. The alien response was predictable. They called humans savage barbarians who did not understand civilized warfare. They said the Empire would never bow to inferior creatures from a primitive world. They promised to fight to the last Vorthon rather than accept human demands. Taehyung had expected this answer. He gave the order for the final phase of the liberation campaign. Every human ship in the fleet received the same command. No mercy for slavers, no quarter for child murderers. End the Vorthon Empire forever. The systematic destruction of Vorthon military power began immediately. Human fleets struck at shipyards and training academies and command centers. Every installation connected to the slave trade was marked for complete destruction. Dr. Sujin's biological weapons appeared in water supplies on Vorthon colonies. The pathogens were designed to be non-lethal but extremely painful. Alien civilians experienced the same kind of suffering their military had inflicted on countless innocent victims. Within weeks, the mighty Vorthon Empire was reduced to scattered survivors hiding in remote star systems. Their fleets were destroyed. Their worlds were in chaos. Their 1,000-year reign of terror